Hi, this is Dr. Mark Sehl from the YouTube channel Therapy for the Heart, and it's Tuesday. Um, I was trying to adjust this screen. It's a very blinding sun out in the back, but I think I managed to do it. All sorts of things you learn later on in life, like adjusting the brightness of the screen. So it's happy to be here, and I'm going to talk about Mrs. G. Mrs. G is a woman who I worked with for quite some time, and I call it, the title of this is A Small Miracle. I met Mrs. G when I was working through the Lenox Hill Neighborhood Association, and I was a social worker, also a psychotherapist, and I was working with the homebound elderly, that's a forgotten people. So I would make a lot of trips to see what their situation was, and being a man, people would let me in easier than I think if I was a woman, and many of the populations people there were women, so I had that advantage. And I worked with Ann Wyatt, who I would do anything for. She was the administrator. A lot of respect for her. So I met Mrs. G and went over to her house, and the first thing I saw was, they said the aides were saying that she'd been drinking, and she said, "No, I don't drink that much." So they were holding a bottle behind her head, like waving it, an empty vodka bottle. So I knew the situation wasn't as she said, so I didn't confront her. I discovered that she hadn't been out of the house in 2 years because of their drinking, but that wasn't really a defined problem. The defined problem was it was depression, but she was also had a drinking problem. So later on, I found a prescription for Percocet from the doctor. So I called the doctor and mentioned that, and also that could be lethal to her if she's drinking. So he pulled the prescription out, didn't see it anymore. But she was groggy one time, and I was asking the aide about that, and she said, well, that's because of the medication she was taking. So I had free reign to see her as often as I wanted to see her, and that's because of the agency that I work for. So I could go up there once, 2, 3 times a week, and she needed a lot of attention, and unfortunately, most agencies are not going to be able to provide that. But she really needed a lot of help. So incontinence was how I framed her stopping to drink, because she was very ashamed of that. So I said, if you stop drinking, your incontinence will improve, and a lot of other things in your life. She lost a lot of friends. She was sort of an obstinate aristocrat. She could be snobby and, angry with the aides. That's understandable. She was, frustrated. She was depending upon a lot of people, and she had survived 3 husbands, physicians, in her life, and she worked for all of them, so she had quite a background. So she took my advice eventually and tried to stop drinking. The aides eventually became more friendly with her because I became friendly with them. So I explained to them the problem with drinking, that it was not in her control until she really understood more about it. And since I was an expert in that, in addition to my being a psychotherapist, I had different specialties. That was one of my specialties, was working with substance use. So Marie stopped, Mrs. G stopped drinking. No, her name was not Marie, but Mrs. G stopped drinking, and suddenly she was able to get out of the house. Now, she hadn't been out of the house in 2 years. She was terrified of a wheelchair for some reason, so probably because of the drinking. So when she stopped drinking for a while, she managed to get into the wheelchair, and I took her outside. We go for walks around the neighborhood, and she had not seen the people in the neighborhood, the doorman, for instance, because the only time she was out of hospitalization, out of the home, was because she was hospitalized for, and that's been important. What she was hospitalized for was right after the death of her dog. She had a major depression, so And investigating it further, I learned this later on, that she had three sisters that died, and she survived three husbands. So there was a lot of loss in her family, and so that made sense in terms of when her daughter died. That was a strong attachment she had. So we used to sit out outside and watch the world go by, and yeah, she liked being out there. And one time we were at a fruit stand, and we walked by the fruit stand. And she said, let's buy some melons. That was really interesting. And eventually she said, Mark, I'm feeling more people hungry now, rather than, hungry for drink. And that was a really amazing statement. Write a book about that. Becoming people hungry, because what alcohol does is, of course, it doesn't help you be motivated to want to reach out into the world. You're isolated, but also it's a lot of sugar in there, so you're not going to have that much of an appetite. So, so I started working with the aides, explaining to them what alcoholism was all about. And once I did that, they became more friendly with me and with Mrs. G. Not that they were unfriendly, but they felt more motivated. So all of a sudden, they wore starched uniforms to when she was working with Mrs. G. When they were working with, she had about 2 or 3 aides. And instead of coming in late, now they're coming in early and on time, and so sometimes we had dinner with all of us, the dinner together, Mrs. G, myself, and whatever aide was there. So it was like a community organization kind of. So, social work background and also psychoanalyst, but here I was working with Mrs. G and applying whatever skills I could have to help her. One of the skills I did have in terms of modern psychoanalysis was to try to help somebody be aggressive with me if they had some objections. Now, she couldn't. She was as strong as she was not very, she could be hostile, but not really direct in terms of what her needs were. So she couldn't tell. People were really bugging her. Everyone was trying to tell her that she's drinking too much. She was losing friends. One friend she had, I don't think, visited her in a long time. So eventually I helped her tell me that she was annoyed at my constant bringing up of her drinking. And that was good. I released some of her aggression. And it was very difficult for her, though, too, because she had an idea that if she did say something like that to me, I would go away forever, like all the other people had done in her life. So that didn't happen. I mean, I did help her tell me how much of a pain in the ass I was. That was good. And that's what we do in modern psychoanalysis. We help somebody, a patient. If it's a breath of fresh air for me. If someone said to me, Dr. Sehl, I don't like what you've been saying, or this office sucks, or whatever that is, and they're not going to be able to do that for a long time. But once they do that, they reduce their symptoms like depression. We talked about this in the video. Depression is turning the anger against the self. I'm a piece of shit. Or psychosomatic medicine. We did some in the videos recently talking about the consequences of suppressing your feelings, which is indicated of cancer can be result from doing that in men and women. So so it was very helpful to me to be able to, for me, because I liked, it gave me pleasure for her to tell me, I don't want like what you're doing. So she made a lot of progress. Let's see what else. Yeah, so she started to see people. She hadn't seen the doormen in ages. There were smells that emanating from her apartment because of the fact that the incontinence through the vents. So there was some increase in tolerance for her from her neighbors. Let's see. So she gained mobility in terms of the wheelchair. Oh, that's another thing I almost forgot. One day I walked in. When she went to the bathroom, she was embarrassed and ashamed because the attendants had to accompany her. So one day I walked into the apartment and she said, "Look, I can walk." So she's walking with her walker. What an accomplishment. She was a wonderful woman. We would tell each other stories about I would tell her a little bit about my life. She would tell me about her life, and gradually I got to know more about the tragedies in her life. And I don't think anybody really got to know her very well because of her drinking, and also because the homebound are very isolated and in life. They're forgotten people. Sometimes I would walk into somebody's apartment. One time there was Mary McGreevy. She's dead now, but she's an Irish woman. And they had to have a psychiatrist come in one time, talk to her, evaluate her. And he said, "You know where the black?" Oh no, he asked her some question about something or other. What's these stupid questions, with people who hardly have any memory? But I don't know. So he said, "Where is something?" And she said, "Well, do you know where the Black Hills are?" One time I was visiting her in the hospital, and she had a roommate there. And I was walking out, and her roommate said, "Who is that?" And she says, "That's my husband." So I had a lot of fun there. And yeah, it's like very difficult. A lot of people who have drinking problems or go unnoticed. And then the big question was, what do we do if somebody has a drinking problem? Do we infringe on them and really break into their apartment or make sure that they stop drinking, or what do we do? My policy was you leave people alone until you can reach out to them and see if have some motivation to really change for themselves, not to be taking over their life. But sometimes I guess you have to. So that's it for today. This is Tuesday with Mark, and I want to mention that I revised the introduction to the podcast. It was somebody pointed out to me how problematic it was. So that intro has been revised. So right up on the site, soundcloud.com/therapy for the heart, no spaces. You can find 2 talks now. So they seem to be pretty good. And the podcast is a companion to the YouTube videos. So whoever doesn't like to watch videos or can't, they can now listen to the podcast, and they have similar content. So the podcast can be a little longer because people are used to having longer talks on the podcast. And YouTube, it's hard to get people to watch for some reason longer talks, and that I can see the reason. Although some longer talks are okay. So this is Mark Sehl. I'm going to sign off for the YouTube channel, Therapy for the Heart. I hope you found this interesting. I'll always remember Mrs. G, and with a lot of affection. So if you want to contact me, you can call at 212-228-3467. Text me at 917-991-9113. Email me at marksehl, marksehl, @gmail.com, or visit my website at the same name, .com, marksehl.com. So thanks a lot. We're seeing you next week. Right, bye-bye for now.